It's really hard. Let me explain both and here, and I'll go into a little detail. First of all, both and universe or both and worldview, there are both either ors and both ands. In an either or universe, there is no both ands. It's either right or wrong. There are no grays. There's a certain way to dress. There's no gray area. And if you look at certain religions, they all dress the same way. To be religious or holy, you have to dress a certain way. There's no both and, it's either or. But in a both and universe, you can all, as long as you're dressed, you need to be dressed to be modest and all that, but how you dress, it's up to the individual preference. And that we have to realize that that's okay. And so I want to show you a little example of this on my little handout writer here thingy. Okay, at the top of the circle is what I call either or. So put that in black there. So the either or is up here. And I learned this in one of my science poli-sci classes. I noticed that the professor would constantly say the pendulum would swing from one extreme to the other, from one extreme to the other. And I had a napkin. After class, I went to a cafe, and I started putting it on a napkin, and I bent the ends up because I noticed it never goes through balance. It goes from one extreme to the other. He said this. It goes from one extreme to the other. What model would fit this? So I have a little drawing on my nail. I still have it in one of my files at home. And I bent it up to where you see this progression till it became a circle. And I wasn't headed for the circle. I was just fascinated with this. And having done Eastern religions in my past, I thought, oh, it's kind of the yin and yang kind of thing, but it's either or. They went from one extreme to the other. For example, okay, you either suppress your anger, is that spelled right? Okay, or you explode. Right? You pack it in. I call it the springboard effect. Pump, 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 and you explode. You went from one extreme to the other. But what's the balance? The balance is in Jesus. He's the both and. He's the perfect both and here. Okay? You express or confess your anger. You express, I'm angry right now. You don't have to explode. Just your anger get a little intense. That's okay. Now, there are some others now in this as well. See if this works now. You have Jesus is both what? He's the perfect both and, isn't he? If he's not 100% man and 100% God, there goes the both and. But he's perfectly God. He's perfectly man. If he's not 100% man, he cannot die for our sins. If he's a skosh off of being human, he can't die for man. He'd have to die for himself. And then he can't resurrect himself because he's got to pay for his sin. That's where God comes in. He's 100% God. So he can be resurrected. So his sacrifice is complete for man, and he can resurrect to make it eternal. Isn't that cool? He has to be the God-man. Anything else in any other religion is short of the perfect sacrifice. That's what we're going to talk about, the only begotten of God, the monogune. He's the only of his genesis. He's the only God-man in the universe, in eternity, in creation. Isn't that cool? And that's what it means by only begotten. He's the only of his kind. He's unique. NIV says what? One and only son, right? One and only son. Now, what they mean by that is he's the only unique son of God because we're all adopted as sons. But it gets a little confusing when I try to explain people that. In John 4:24, it says we must worship the Lord in spirit and another both and, right? Some churches a little more on the spirit side. Some churches a little more on the truth side. The balance is in Jesus. Each church has a different culture. A little more on the spirit side. A little more on the truth side. But the letter without the spirit is death. The letter kills, but the spirit gives life. You need both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law to make it a living document. God breathed in man the spirit of life, and he became a living being. He was just a bunch of dead clay. That's the law. The law is just a bunch of dead stuff until the Lord goes, poof, and he breathes in the breath of life, and he becomes a living being. You see the both and? There's so many both ands. Now, you could say, how do I know something's both and? Often when people are arguing the two extremes, it's a both and. That's a hint. But what's really cool, like in Greek, there's the active voice, I hit you. Passive voice, I was hit by you. Middle voice, we hit each other. Okay? There's action in the object and the actor are together. That's the both and. Hebrew has the same thing. It's just really fascinating where it's a both and in the language. It just blows my mind. Not everything is both and, though. You're either dead or you're not mostly dead. Or a little bit dead. Yeah, you're either dead or you're alive. There are either ors, okay? Now, pardon me for being so crude here, but you're either pregnant or you're not, okay? You're not kind of. You see what I'm saying? So there are either ors. And those are some simple ones that make it obvious, okay? But the fact is, in a both and universe, you have both either ors and both ands. But in an either or universe, they cannot handle this both and thinking because it's either right or it's wrong. It's black or white. I don't get this. And a lot of miscommunication I've had to do in this last couple months is because there are either or people I'm talking to, and I'm trying to talk both and. Both and sometimes solves a lot of problems, particularly in political circles. You want to bring both extremes together. But what happens in our culture today, and I'm doing purple now, is they go from one extreme to the other. And it's dizzying. It's dizzying. Whoa, where do we just go with this? But this is the both and universe I want to talk about here, okay? So you got spirit and truth. You've got God and man. Again, I did those in handprints so you could read them. But just understand, these are biblical truths. And again, I called it originally integrative theology, but my professors borrowed that title, so I did use both and more frequently. They didn't quite understand what I was talking about here. But all the theology, kingdom theology, dominion theology, Pentecostal, they all have something good to offer. But where do we start with? The Bible. If it's in the book, it's good. If it's white space, not good. It's imagination, vain imaginations,